Okay, the last two classes we gave an introduction to the Torah, and we also translated the first three words of the Torah, Bereshis bara Elokim, in the beginning God created, and we translated as with wisdom was brought forth, a power of boundaries. And today we will continue and add the rest of the sentence, or the verse, and then we will expound and explain some of the differences in how words are translated and different meanings of them. So the next word in the Torah after Bereshis bara Elokim is Eis Hashamayim Eis Eretz, the heaven and the earth. The word Eis or Eight is never translated in any translations. It's just sitting there as if it's not necessary, but it's there and has a purpose. And in order to translate them, I've looked at the different meanings of what the word Eis or Eight is. And in this case, we translate it with the heaven and with the earth. So Eis here would mean with. And we find in Bamidbar, in Numbers chapter 25, there it says, the man who was slain Eis with the Midianite woman. So there the Torah actually uses the word and it means with. So I use that here. The Ramban writes that the letters of this word, Aleph to Tov, Eis, refers to the essence of a matter and always appears next to a word to include something. He says that the root of the word Eis is from the word Asa Baker, which is in Isaiah chapter 21, morning is coming. And so therefore the root is coming, that something is coming with this word. It's bringing something in to whatever it's talking about here. According to Reb Chaim Vital, who was a famous student of the Arizal, he says that the word Eis reflects the shell of matter, that it's an energy form that surrounds each thing to protect it. And so it's a word of protection for the word it's coming with, or gives more energy to it. Now, Eis is the letters Aleph to Tov. Aleph is the first Hebrew letter, Tov is the last Hebrew letter. So it incorporates everything within there, in that space. Everything from Aleph to Tov, from A to Z, I guess. Now, in translating it with, under the letter, you have different vowels, different dots. Under the letter Eis, in this case, you have two dots, one next to the other, 2 points, which is called a tseirei. In Hebrew, when you have the two dots together like that, it gives it a movement of connection, these two dots together. So while the letters don't normally have a specific translation, they refer to a deep movement and they have a more encompassing general meaning. And in each place, they have a meaning according to whatever that place is talking about. And in this case, it's talking about Shamayim, heaven, and so it has a connection with the Shamayim, with the heaven. We'll see what Shamayim means. Okay. Now, the word Shamayim is translated as heaven, but it says Bereshis bara Elokim Eis Hashamayim. It uses the word Hey first. Hey, the letter Hey at the beginning of a word is utilized for clarification. Hey is the, so it gives some type of clarification to whatever is going on. And in other words, something specific. And in this verse, we're talking about potential, the potential of creation. And so it's something specific the initial part of the creation. At this point, everything is still one, as we will soon explain, and separation only occurs later on, actually after Adam and Eve, but that we will talk more about. Okay, the word Shamayim is translated as heaven. Does anyone know what heaven is? Has anyone been there?
No.
Heaven is an interesting word. It's very, for people who, with their imaginations, it's a wonderful thing. The Torah is a practical book to teach us guidance, understanding. We're talking about something that we don't even relate to. We don't know what it is. Shamayim, the heaven. What is it? If you translate it as sky, okay, we relate to the sky, but heaven is just a word that has no real meaning other than in fiction. The word Shamayim is a composition of two words. There are a few different explanations of what the word means, but the most general one is that it's made up of two words, which is Eish and Mayim, fire and water. Two opposite movements. Fire, when it burns upwards. Water, when it flows downwards. So they're opposite movements. So when we're talking about the word heaven here, it means everything is balanced. Eish and Mayim, fire and water, it coexist together as one. Water doesn't put out fire doesn't put out water, even though they're not physical here at all, but they're coexisting as one entity. And in that space, when everything is balanced, if you live in a balanced space, everything is in place, you're living in heaven, physically. That's what you would call heaven. So the word heaven doesn't mean necessarily a spiritual place, it's a physical place also. Everything is balanced. And that's what the word means, a balance of opposite movements. And it's also interesting that the word Shamayim has two letters at the end, Yud and Mem. And we're taught that whenever Yud and Mem, Yim, comes at the end of a word, it refers to something that's double. For example, the middle of the day is called Tzaharayim, where the morning and the afternoon come together. It's a middle point where the two at the same place, meet at the same place, coexist. And the same thing is true of the city of Yerushalayim. In Tehillim 122, it says Yerushalayim is two cities together. There were two places there and it brought them together. So the word Yim, the letters Yim reflect two things coming together. So if you just say Shom Yim, even if you don't say it's Eish Shamayim, fire and water, Shom Yim, there is the point of two things coming together where everything is balanced together. So that is one way of looking at the word Shamayim. Now, then you have the word Ve'es, and with, which normally isn't translated just at Ace or eight, and with, and you have the word Eretz, earth, which we'll soon explain what that is. Eretz is the desire to do the Creator's will. And we'll go more into what that is in a moment. The word ve'es, when you have a vav, so it's only translated and, they don't usually have the with. The word and, the vav is a yud at the top with a line that comes down on its right side. That reflects, the yud on top reflects the Creator, and the vav reflects that something is drawn down. It's brought forth, brought down from a higher level to a lower level, from one place to another. The vav is actually interesting in another way. It's a letter of that transforms things. So it takes the space of the balance and it transforms it to another type of space. It moves it to the space which is called Eretz, which we'll soon explain. Where do we see the vav as a transformation? For example, if you have the word haya, haya is past tense, and it was. If you put the letter vav at the beginning, V'haya, then it'll be v'hayam shmoya, and it will be when. It becomes future tense. And same thing, a future tense, you put a vav in the middle, it becomes past tense. So it changes, it transforms the tense. So vav is not just something that joins things together, but it also transforms things. Now, a plural, the Shamayim, heaven, or as we said, balance of opposite movements. The word itself is a plural word, Shamayim, so it's not heaven, but heavens. And therefore it's not just balance of opposite movement, but opposite movements, because the word itself is a plural word which brings two extremes. It's talking about two different extremes coming together. So there's two things here. It's a unity of two opposites. So even though it's not actual physical fire and water, but it's the energy of what we call fire and water. In other words, the source of where fire and water would be created from, in their source, they work together as one. And because they work together as one in the source, that's why water can put out fire and fire can steam water, because there's a relationship. If they had no relationship, like oil and water, one wouldn't really affect the other. So there has to be a relationship somewhere, and it's in their source. And so the word Shamayim, water, this can be defined as something that's very inward. It doesn't go up or down, or it's just an infinite upward flow. The word can also mean a space that receives from a Shamayim, from fire and water. And the Bible Unauthorized translates it as a fiery liquid mass, because he sees it from a physical place, a gas vapor, because it's not really that physical, so he looks at it as a vapor. The word also can be read as Shamayim. Sa means to lift up. Mayim is water. But what does water do? Water flows from a high place to a low place. It flows, all the waters flow to the sea, all rivers flow to the sea. And so Shamayim, elevated flow, it suggests that there's a flow above the level where creation is. No matter what level you're on, there's always a level above you. So that when you say the word heaven, there's not just one heaven, or there's one level above you. Whatever level you're at, there's a level above you. There's a balance that's above you. Descriptions give us a limit. Description is a limit, but it also gives you a base on which to expand from. You can use a description in two ways: to limit or to expand from it. And the letters can also be written Sham, Yam, there, sea. This can mean that the flow of all matter is in place. It's flowing the way it has to flow. Or that now a space has been formed for Yam. The Hebrew word Shamayim is also associated with wisdom and understanding. As it says in Tehillim, in Psalms 136, he made Shamayim with understanding. And in Proverbs 24, it says, through wisdom a house is built, b'chachma bansa beisa, and through understanding it's established. So there are a few different ways that people look at the word Shamayim and what it means. So we basically translate it as a balance of opposite movements. And the Vav, and with, is a life force that pulls things forward into the next space. Eretz, earth. A very interesting word. About balance of opposite movements, it's also explained that way in Sefer HaPliyah, in the Zohar, in Kelos Yaakov. There are a few places that describe it as a balance of opposite movements, and we'll talk about that later on when it comes to the Chet Eitzadas, the aspect of the imbalance that Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, created through the tree. Eretz, the Medrash Rabbah says, why is it called Eretz? because in Pesha it wanted to do the will of the Creator. The Vilna Gaon explains that the shorish of the word is roitze or rotza, will or desire, want. And in Malachi, I guess, chapter 3, it connects Eretz with desire. The first letter in Eretz is an Aleph, which is numerically 1, and the second is Rotz. Rotz means to run. It has a running movement, which is desire is a running movement. Will is a running movement. So the Aleph represents the oneness of the Creator. And after that you have the flow, the Rotz, the running. And the Keach writes that the word Eretz indicates the place that holds the will of the desire of Hashem. So it's called, he changes a little bit from the Medrash. He still agrees that it's will or desire, but not because it wanted to do the will of the Creator, but that Eretz holds the will of the desire. That us being here, we have desire, we have feeling, we want to do things because this is where the Creator wants us to be. That's the desire of the Creator. Why we're here? Because we don't understand the Creator, we don't understand the desire. And that's why there's always confusion in life, and that's why there's always a question and something we don't understand. But this is the desire of the Creator. That's why we're here. For no other reason. Some say the word of Eretz is from the word rotzatz, similar to the rotzatz, which means smashing, crushing, oppression, coercion, pieces, agitation, compressed. One extension, and in that way they explain life as being always with problems and pain. Living on earth is a painful and difficult experience. It's a lot of work. One extension of the root is merutza. Also has the word rotz in it, to run. Merutza means satisfied or agreeable. Another extension of the word is meretz, which means vigor and strength. But in actual fact, the only word that actually means a physical earth is the word adama. Adama is the earth, the actual ground, the physical earth. There are many different words that actually define, that talk about earth in Hebrew. In one place it says there are 7 words, in another place it says 10 words, different things. For example, tevel, tzia, arka, olam, different words that say earth. They're all translated as earth, but they have different meanings, different aspects of earth. There's also a discussion if there are other creations, other earths below this earth, other levels on this earth. There are many different discussions, which is not the point here, but these names refer to different things. Some refer to spiritual worlds, some to physical worlds, but it's different aspects of earth. It's interesting to note that the word Eretz, which is translated earth, which we translate here as desire to do the Creator's will, is neither feminine nor masculine. And generally in Hebrew you speak in a feminine or masculine way, but there's some words that don't have each, and this is one word that's neither.
Which one?
And Eretz. The fact that this non-gender word, it's a non-gender word, is used as reflective of the non-human characteristic of the Creator. It's significant because at this juncture of man's creation, where it says later on, it says man was made b'tselem, in the image of God. The word b'tselem actually is not exactly image. The word tzel means shadow. So it's not exactly image as people translate, and we'll discuss it more when we come to that place. Because there is discussion that Adam, when it says Adam, it's not talking about a man or a woman. The creation was initially man and woman as one. There was no separation. You didn't have feminine and masculine separated. So that's because there was no separation in the Creator. And since, as well as the creator is not, you cannot define the creator by any image or by gender or by anything, that creates a limitation, which it's not. Now, it also uses the word by ha'aretz. Eis Hashemayim ve'eis ha'aretz, the, which we said before, that the is something which defines something. So there's a potential for many different types of motivations and yearnings. And since the Hebrew word rotz means to run, so the letters themselves have a running movement in channeling movement from the Creator's desire, from infinity into here. Now, it's an infinite, we call it infinite downward movement because it comes from infinity to finite, but you cannot go from infinite to finite. So it's a channel which is, it skips something, which we'll talk about later. But when you have opposite movements, desire also, it brings up desire. Opposite movements brings up other energy, which also can be desire. And sometimes if you want someone to desire something, you hold it back from them, you say something opposite, you do the opposite for them to go in an opposite direction and create desire for something. Now, desire embraces the wisdom of creation. The word Eretz here is the will of the Creator, so the wisdom that that the earth was created in is included in the word Eretz. And in the book of Ezekiel, Yechezkel, in the first chapter, it says the life force runs to and fro, back and forth. It doesn't matter which way it's going, positive, negative, whichever way you want to look at it, it's still all part of the Creator's will and oneness. And in Sefer Yetzirah, it uses the word Imrotz libcha, if your heart is running, return to one, the oneness of the Creator. Or with the running of your heart, return to one. It's two different ways that it could have been written. The Creator's will, the desire to do the Creator's will, by saying that it's the desire to do the Creator's will, you automatically are creating the opposite. When you define something, you're defining what this is, and therefore it's what it's not. So if you're making Creator's will, you're automatically creating the opposite of Creator's will. By saying there's Creator's will, what does that mean? That there's something that's not Creator's will. You don't think of that, huh? So the word rotz, we explained, refers to ratzon, relates to a desire, a will. Aleph is one, so this refers to the true oneness of existence. And that true oneness is what motivates all desire that exists. And eventually, after everything goes through the journey of this earth, that's been going on for thousands of years, the positive and negative, everything eventually will go back to that oneness, because internally everything is the life force which the Creator gives it. And actually the word ratzon, will, if you rearrange Reish Tzadik Vav Nun, it has the same letters as notzar. Notzar means to form. And so the will forms different things. Any questions?
Yes.
What?
How do you get H from Shamayim? There's no Aleph in Shamayim.
There's a Shim. The Aleph is silent. This is what they explain in in words in Hebrew. There's a lot of silent letters, and there's letters when things are combined. You drop letters, and so it's explained that it is of a Shamayim.
So the Aleph is actually there, but it's not normally spelled that way.
It's not spelt in that word. Yes. If you read a lot of letters and words, you'll see that in Hebrew there's hey and there's vavs, a lot of letters that you don't actually pronounce the letters as you're reading the word. So, and there are times in the Torah where those letters are dropped or letters are added, and you actually don't say them. So this is not uncommon, actually, in biblical Hebrew, in Torah Hebrew. Yeah.
How seriously is Sefer Yetzirah studied these days? Or?
It's very serious, and it's very accepted, and you find very major, the Vilna Gaon writes a whole commentary throughout the last several hundred years. You find most of the major leaders have written commentaries on it or quote it. So it's definitely a very accepted book as an ancient text. It's some attributed to Abraham. It was written to Abraham, and the famous Golem of Prague. It describes how to create the golem, and there are others attributed to written later on in the time of the Bis Hamikdash or later. But it's definitely accepted as a few thousand years old. It's hard to say really when you go back to ancient texts and you find it to say for sure who it is, even if there's a name on it. But it's definitely an old ancient text that everyone seems to accept. Yeah.
I didn't hear the question. What text are you talking about?
The Sefer Yetzirah. That's what it's called, which I quoted. And there it actually talks about the Hebrew letters as building blocks of creation. And it describes it in different ways. It is interesting.
Can you define the whole sentence now that we finished?
Yes, I will do that. The whole first verse, which is normally translated, in the beginning God created heaven and earth, we're translating as, with wisdom is brought forth a power of boundaries, with the balance of opposite movements, and with a desire to do the Creator's will. Okay, now we've also shown that there are different meanings. Last week we went into different meanings of the words, a few today. So I'm going to show you some examples of when you go through the words and the different meanings, how the verse can be translated in different ways. So I'm going to give you some examples of that. With thought, because barosh means with head, could be with thought, a clearing is made to define elements that exist in complete harmony and that exist in the flowing oneness. That's another way you can translate the first verse. Another way is with rashis. Some don't translate the first word at all. They leave it as rashis, whatever it means. With rashis, whatever that means, is formed the ability of definitions, including the element of balance and the oneness with the flow. Another way of translating the first verse is with conception is birthed discernment about the elements in unity and about the oneness flowing through all existence. Another way of translating it is with the best, a clearing is formed for power to be pulled, forming the space for the pull and to bring forth the oneness in flow. Another way of translating it is with a base that has openings, is brought forth through Elokim the needs of Shamayim and the needs of Eretz. That is one of the ways that ace is translated as needs. Another way of translating it is with rashis, a clearing is made for Elokim, including the Shamayim and the Eretz. They don't translate those words. Another way is forming a veil. We explained also rashis could be a veil. Forming a veil brought forth boundaries, balance, and movement. Or with rashis is formed the name Elokim with a protective coating encompassing Shamayim, and with a protective coating encompassing Eretz. So these are a few different ways that when you start studying the words, the sentence can have many different meanings on many different levels. There's probably a lot more, but this is enough to give us an idea that there's a lot more than what we've normally thought of or studied. Now, any questions?
There's so many meanings
Yes.
to each word.
Mm-hmm.
how can you go about determining which is the most significant translation?
If there are so many meanings to each word, how can you decide which is the most significant? That's an interesting question. Actually, there isn't a most significant. Everything is significant.
Not most significant.
What
the
it
way it
means,
was
a translation is interpretation.
okay.
Okay? What we're saying is that the letters and the words of Torah which we use to form and create the world and express how creation happened, they're active words, and they have many levels of meaning. So it's not one is right and the other is wrong, or one's better and one's worse. What it means is that the creation can be perceived, every letter and word can be perceived on many levels. And when you learn it only in one level and say, this is what God means, and there's nothing else, then you're not even listening to God. You're not listening to the Creator, because you're limiting the Creator to the way you think. Whereas what we're doing now is showing there's a lot more than what we think. There's so many different ways. It's very vast. But the only way to show you it's vast is by taking letters and words and showing you how the roots have different meanings and the energy has different meanings, and then you can expand on it. And then, once you understand it, then you can start going through the rest of Torah, and everything else will open up. And it won't be the limited way that we were always taught. So, when you have here, you have in the verse, you have wisdom or thought, you have elikim, you have boundaries, limitations, you have balance, and you have movement. 4 different elements here. And these 4 different elements are things that are important. And if you have wisdom, but you don't have balance, it doesn't help. A person needs balance. If you have balance, but you have no movement, you're not going anywhere. You're dead where you are. You're in the grave. So it needs the different things. If you have movement, but you don't have balance, then where are you going to go after the movement? You have to come back to some balance. Just running around, as the expression is like a chicken without a head, is without a head. If you have creation without wisdom, then everything is just wild. There is just, it's destructive. And if you have, if you don't have definitions, then again, it's infinite, just goes on, it doesn't come together. And in fact, in order to create, there had to be definitions. Because if the Creator is infinite, then you cannot create any defined or limited matter. So in order to create, the first thing Hashem had to do was make a limited space. Create something, a definition. Because only through definition could creation begin to happen. So, for example, if you say God is infinite, okay, what does that mean? That means that the Creator, that God is not part of the creation, because we are limited. We have definitions. And if you say the Creator is infinite, something infinite cannot be part of finite, because then it's not infinite anymore. Okay? And if something is finite, and it connects with infinity, it's not finite anymore. So how do we connect with the Creator? So the Creator is not something that's finite or infinite. The Creator created infinity because infinity is a definition. And infinity has a limitation. It's infinite and not finite. The Creator created definition, which is infinite and finite, and therefore the Creator is beyond definition, is part of both. And because the Creator is part of both, if we do the desire of the Creator, which is called mitzvahs, then we connect with an energy that's beyond definition. And that's how we do the desire of the Creator, and that's how we bring a balance back. That's enough.
You need a huge
You can-
blackboard.
You can digest that one. Okay. So, with wisdom is brought forth, which is the beginning. The question is from where? The simple answer is from a source with no definition. We have no definition, but it was brought forth. Now, where do you think creation comes from? So what we just explained, if you give a definition, then what are the limitations of that definition?
Definition isn't
Is a limitation. So there has to be a limitation to it. And if there's a limitation to it, what is it and where did that come from? It's like if you go back, something had to come from something else. Things don't just appear on their own. So if something exists, what created it? It doesn't matter what you say existed. How did it come into existence? It came from somewhere.
what came first, the chicken or the egg.
It's irrespective, it's irrelevant if the chicken or the egg came first, because you can't call something a chicken or egg unless you have a definition. Something has to exist for things to come. You can't have a chicken or egg if nothing exists. There has to be something there for either of them to be created or to exist.
Whoa.
Did that crack the egg?
No, I'll tell you, way above me.
Okay.
But aren't there things we're not supposed to understand? Aren't we not supposed to understand? Wisdom doesn't hit that degree about where everything came from, what was the originate. We're not supposed to know that.
And what happens if you do know it?
You better write a book. Because nobody else does.
Okay. So the answer is that everything came from a creator that has no definition. And because the essence of where everything came from has no definition, that's why we cannot comprehend it in our mind and give it a definition, because it doesn't have one. That's simple.
It's obvious.
Yep. Right. So the moment a person understands that they have limitations, I'm a human being, I come from somewhere, I begin and I end. My mind has limitations. I can only understand something according to my senses, according to the tools that I have. But there's always more. So when a person understands the limitation, they can accept there's something beyond their limitation, then they can accept there exists an energy that's beyond our comprehension, whatever that is. So it doesn't have a word God, creator, it has no word. We just use the word creator or God or whatever to talk about something we don't know about, but it's not limited to that definition. So, whatever it is, that existence that has no beginning and no end and no definition, that everything comes from, created this existence. When you look at the world, you try to understand, this doesn't make sense. When I look at what's going on out there, it's something, how can the creator, how can a being make such a thing that's so strange, with the things that happen to people, things that happen to the world, something doesn't make sense. And so you start wondering about this world, what it's here for, all the questions. We'll go more into detail about this actually when we discuss Adam and Eve and the tree and the journey. Because what it says there is that Adam and Eve, they ate from the fruit of the tree. Hashem told them to choose a journey for their future generations, and showed them the fruit of the tree, which actually represents the end result of different journeys. And they chose one of the fruits which looked best. What they didn't know was the journey to get to that end result. So while this world may look like an experiment, may look like, I don't know what it looks like, but there's an end result that was chosen at the beginning, that going through this journey will bring us to that end result, which is what Adam and Eve, what Adam and Chava saw at the beginning. Now, if the world was created without wisdom, or without thought, what would it be? So it's brought down that it would be a different type of world. It would be a world without wisdom. A lot of people go around without seichel, without wisdom. It'll be a different type of world.
How would it be possible for the world to be created without wisdom?
Since you didn't create the world, and you don't have to create it, you don't have to worry how it's possible.
Look at City Hall.
Huh?
Look at City Hall.
Like City Hall? Without wisdom. Okay.
You get out of it.
What it does say, the sages talk about, before this world there were many other worlds created. And these worlds were different types of worlds, but each one of them didn't have one thing, another thing, so God created and destroyed many worlds before this world. Whether they were on the physical earth they were created, or spiritual realms, doesn't really matter, but there were many types of worlds. And so each one had its issue until God decided this is the world, type of world I'm going to create here. So can it be created without wisdom? Absolutely. And can things exist without wisdom? Yes. But when we talk about wisdom here, what we're talking about is that everything that exists has a very deep wisdom in it. If you just take science, you look at the molecules and you look at what's behind everything, when you start opening things up with the microscope, larger and larger, everything loses form, it loses shape, it loses color, and it's just movement. The more you can open it up with a microscope, the more you can see. 10,000, 20,000, the bigger it is, it loses everything that we see physically, and that's science. So you don't need to actually imagine. There's a precision in all this movement that's beyond our understanding how it even got there. We see that everything is precise, not just in a superficial way, but in an intrinsic way. And so the more you study, the more you see there's wisdom in everything, in every molecule and every little piece that exists. Every bug, everything has a purpose and a reason. So what it would be like if it didn't have it, it doesn't really matter so much, because that's not where we live. We have to look at where we live, and where we live does have the wisdom. We have to respect it, understand it, and work with it. Now, what's the difference if you say Bereshis is with the beginning, or in the beginning, or with wisdom? When you say in the beginning, you're talking about time. Beginning is about time. When you say it's with wisdom, you're not talking about time. So when people learn it, they're learning about time. How many years ago was it? How many thousands or millions or billions of years ago was it? Because it's time. But if you translate it as wisdom, it's not about time anymore. It's a concept. And therefore it's irrelevant how old the world is or isn't, because time is not created here. Time happens in another place. This is talking about the feeling, the depth of what's going on, not about time. So there's a big difference when you do the two. So all the discussions that people have about time become irrelevant here when you understand the word means wisdom or thought. So all the books that you see are irrelevant. Suddenly don't apply here. And so when it has, with wisdom, there's no specific beginning and no specific end. As long as the wisdom is there, wisdom remains. And so does the creation. When you say something begins, something has an end. When you're 1 day old, 2 days old, it's old already. It starts decaying from when it's born. We have an end. That's why people are looking. Where's the end of the world? What's it going to be? Where is it? Because they're limited in time. When you relate to a person's born and they die. But if the person you relate to is an energy, is a feeling, it's a love, it's not the physical body, it's the heart, the soul, the mind. It's an awareness. Then even when the body dies, that energy, that connection remains. It never goes away. You love someone, you connect with someone, they die, The body's, you're missing the body, but the energy, what they stood for, the feeling, that still exists. The soul exists. It exists forever. It doesn't go away. So when you're talking about wisdom, you're talking about a creation that's not limited on time, on birth and death. You're talking about something that is not limited to the physical qualities that we associate with time. And therefore, in a certain way, it's beyond our comprehension. Now, it's not just wisdom of the mind. There is wisdom of the heart as well. And it's the wisdom of the heart that if we listen to, we can connect. We can truly connect with the Creator. Because it's beyond comprehension. We can comprehend things. Absolutely. And we have to comprehend them. We were given a mind, and that's what we need to do as much as we're able to. But where our mind stops, that's where you have to let the heart take over and take you beyond where you could go on your own, with your own mind. And people who listen to the heart can hear many things that the mind won't hear. Whether they call it intuition or they call it some other name, I don't know, but it's there. How did creation exactly happen? Is a very interesting topic. And people can imagine things, but I never met anyone who was there. So, since I never met anyone who's there, therefore, anyone who gives me any description, as far as I'm concerned, is a fiction. Because even if people are in a place, when you have everyone in one place seeing things, each one comes away with a different description of what happened or how things happened. Which is why when you read history, what people write, and even today when people experience, you have to say, okay, this is the way this person saw it. What other ways could it be seen as or interpreted as? And so when you go back to something that no one was there, it becomes irrelevant how it happened. You cannot make it happen again. It's not possible because you don't know what happened. You can create things. That doesn't mean you know what happened there. Yeah.
But there was a description of what was created on the first day, the second day, the third day.
The description in Torah of what was created first, second, and third day doesn't tell you how it was created. It just says this was made, this was made, this was made. It doesn't describe it. But as we go through the words, you'll find a description of what is actually happening. There is a description. And it's not actually day 1, day 2, day 3. You'll see that it's actually levels of expression of the Creator in creation, 6 levels or 7 levels, and it's not actually, the word Yom has another meaning besides day. And you'll see how that, when we come to the word Yom, that will be very interesting, because it's a whole flow of energy. The whole first chapter is actually a spiritual creation, and only later, in the second chapter, does it become physical. But when we go through each word, then we'll be able to see that much clearer. I can say it now, but I'd rather go through the words to show how that flows. Now, when the creation happened, the second word, bara, which created, we say, brought forth, and we explained the word bar has many meanings, actually. Birthing, bringing forth, and it was kind of a vacuum. A vacuum is created for something to exist. Now to us, a vacuum means nothing is there. But a vacuum in creation doesn't mean nothing was there. A vacuum means that the only thing that existed there is the Creator. And since it's a substance that's beyond definition, it can exist in a vacuum because it has no definition. And in a vacuum, there's nothing we can define either. So it's the same thing. And when you say that Hashem created with thought, that space that everything is created in is in the mind. Just like when we think, we imagine things. They're all in the brain. They're all in the mind. What happens? Do we have less of a mind because we thought a lot of things? Is my mind going to explode because I'm thinking too much? It doesn't. The brain is the brain. There's activity there, but you can think all different things. and that those things are the reality in your mind, but you still have a mind. It doesn't make less or more. Your mind encompasses everything, and the energy of whatever you're thinking is all energy of your mind. The same way, everything that exists, it's existing within the Creator. And so the energy that sustains everything that exists, good, bad, positive, negative, whatever it is energy of the Creator. And so it's there, the underlying life force behind everything is the Creator, is Hashem. Yes.
Could it be said that we are now in the mind of the Creator?
Could it be said we're in the mind of the Creator?
Is this all going on in the Creator's mind
Well,
right now?
if we're saying the Creator has no definition,
Okay.
how can you say the mind of the Creator?
Okay.
The only reason we're talking about the brain and the mind is to give an example, something we can comprehend. How something you can create something, and it appears in your mind as if it exists,
Right.
but it doesn't detract from you. It's still part of you. And the same way, the force of the Creator is everywhere, and so when it created this world and whatever other worlds, it's still here. It didn't leave. It's still the life force of everything. Now, we say a power of boundaries. What is a power? A power is a force in creation. It's not the Creator, it's a force. Have you ever noticed the names of angels? Michael, Gavriel, Oziel, a lot of them finish with the word El. El means a power. Elohim, El, we explained, is power. And so each angel is called the power of this, the power of that, the power of that. Each angel has its own mission. It's a messenger. And so it reflects a power, and that's what the word El means. That's what a power is. It's a power of boundaries, which means that there's a limited form, a limited something, but if there's a limitation, as we said, there's something beyond it as well. Now, you can use the word boundaries, limitation, or structure. What's the difference if you say boundaries, power boundaries, or you say limitations, or you say structure? What's the difference in the words? The difference is how you feel when you say the word, whether it's in your vision or perspective. When you say the word limitation, structure, then it reduces matter, it limits matter, it closes stuff in. But we have an ability to see more with boundaries because they create a space that a person could spring from, jump around. It can break a vast concept into smaller pieces, which can break us down. What people often do is they take structures, let's say religion, or take a philosophy, they take it and they close themselves in. Their mind, their being, they close themselves into the structure. The purpose of Torah is not to take the words and close yourself in, as many people do. This is what the word means, it's nothing else. The purpose is to take the words as a base to expand from. It's a boundary, it limits, but it also expands. You can go places. And you go places, and then you can come back to your place as well. So when you use the word boundaries, it has a different feeling than the word limitation. So that's why we call it the power of boundaries. Any other questions? Nothing yet? Okay, well, just a few more minutes, and then we'll go to matter. Now, the word Shamayim we translate as a balance of opposite movements. Does true balance exist? Every matter, no matter what it is, has its own type of balance. Something may appear out of balance, in its one specific setting, but it's balanced in another. Sometimes you see the balance, sometimes you don't see. There are different types of balances. In life, there are ups and downs. World history repeats itself again and again and again, the same thing. We seem to have to learn the same things again and again.
Why do we teach it?
Huh?
So why do we teach it?
Why do we teach it?
Yeah, it's constantly repeating. Why do we teach it?
That's
if
why-
we don't learn anything from it, if
That's why we're giving this class so people can get out of the limits that have limited us for so long and expand and move forward from it. Within creation exists a different and unique type of balance and imbalance. Each moment has its own life force. There's every moment, we say each moment, everything is recreated. Why? Because each moment has a balance and imbalance. And the fact that something seems out of balance now doesn't mean the next moment it won't have balance. And something that looks balanced now doesn't mean the next moment it won't become imbalanced. Imbalance has balance in it, otherwise it couldn't be out of balance. And balance reflects that if it's balanced, there must be an opposite. So each one has within it an element of the other. It's what you see and what you don't see. Sometimes what appears good may end up being negative. May end up being good too. Sometimes something negative may end up being good. It may be negative too. So it continues to change and move. And so what we ask for is that in each moment of our life, we look for the balance. We try to have a balance, make the balance so that the next moment we can find a new balance. And when it changes again, we look again for a balance. Because we know there is wisdom in everything, we know that the Creator guides everything, and we know that we don't comprehend everything. So therefore, the best we can do is find that balance. And with this, we'll conclude today, and see you next week.
Oh, yeah.